You're on a journey through the Bible to experience the epic story of God and to learn your part to play in the unfolding drama. Prepare for your role as you learn your history, your enemy, and your king. Welcome to the Bible Brief. Join us today as we dive into three important themes of the Bible story. Themes that demonstrate the holiness, righteousness, and mercy of God. You're listening to the Bible Brief. As the story of the Bible unfolds, we're getting to know more about God and more about His plan in the world. He's going to bless the whole world, and He's going to do it through a special descendant of Eve, of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob. But outside of this core expectation, God is also developing our understanding of this coming seed through the various themes that come out of the story. So today we're going to focus on three themes we're discovering as the story unfolds. Those are 1. The tabernacle and the priests, 2. Testing and the law, and 3. Faith, not the flesh, is key to righteousness. Okay, so first, the tabernacle and the priests. As you'll recall, the tabernacle was an elaborate tent that God had the nation of Israel set up while they were in the wilderness. It was in this tent that God made His presence dwell on the earth, and it was here that the people would come to meet with God. But not just any people could enter the tent complex. That was reserved for a special group of people called the priests. These priests would do all the activities that God commanded in and around the tabernacle, and especially the sacrificial offerings. We mentioned that there were two main groups of offerings: the worship offerings, that were either produce or animal sacrifices, and the sin offerings that were almost always with animals. We also mentioned the high point on the sacrificial calendar, which was called the Day of Atonement, where the high priest would go into the holiest place in the tabernacle to offer sacrifices first for his own sin, and then for the sin of the people of Israel. The tabernacle and the priests became a basic structural component of worship through sacrifice that would be done by the people of Israel. As we think about this structure, however, we need to take note of some important functions of what God has commanded. First, God set up a system with mediators. That is, these designated priests performed duties on behalf of the rest of the people of Israel. This meant that the priests had this in-between role, a buffer between the regular Israelite and God Himself. Priests were the ones who were, in a way, closest to the presence of God. If you as a regular Israelite wanted to sacrifice something to God, you would come to a priest, and he would do it on your behalf. This is why they were called mediators. They were the medium through which the sacrificial worship was performed in Israel. Now, with these special functions, these priests had to be what was called ritually clean before they could perform their mediation function as priests in the tabernacle. Ritual cleanliness meant special washings and clothing so that each priest was in his most normal, natural state before God. Ritual uncleanness was often avoided. A priest might become ritually unclean through things like contact with a dead body, contact with a dead animal, eating particular types of meat, among many other things. The point here is simply this: the priests had a special responsibility to be ritually clean prior to performing their functions as priests in the tabernacle. Neglecting cleanliness would put them at odds with God. Another important note about the tabernacle is that God has made a place of meeting with Him. He designates a special place on the earth where the people are to come near to Him and worship Him. Now, this doesn't rob God of His omnipresence, the fact that He's everywhere all the time. After all, God is a non-physical spirit. Rather, the fact that God has designated a place of meeting is an expression of His mercy. It provides a visual, physical manifestation of God's non-physical existence. It helps people understand and experience the non-physical God. Finally, the last note on the tabernacle is this: sin requires atonement. Said a different way, sin requires a covering so that we can stand before God. We saw the first example of atonement when God provided a covering for Adam and Eve's nakedness in the garden. And this is a good picture for us. Our sin makes our internal corruption nakedly seen by God, and this corruption is repugnant to him because he is holy and pure and perfect. Atonement gives people a covering so that they can draw near to God in relationship with him. Atonement gives us clothes to cover our corrupt nakedness. All these pictures of God's presence, of being clean before him and being covered before him, show up here in the tabernacle and continue to show up as we move toward an even more permanent structure for God's dwelling place on the earth. Let's move on to the next theme, testing in the law. One of the important things that we should notice in the Bible is how often God's commands are equated with testing. Remember, before the binding of Isaac at Mount Moriah in Genesis 22, it says that in this, God tested Abraham. Now, this word test carries both the idea of a trial and an idea of a proof. Abraham had faith in God, which we learned explicitly 7 chapters earlier in Genesis, but God was having him prove it through a trial. Similarly, we see this testing theme play out with the nation of Israel in the wilderness. Remember when God made the water potable using the log? The text said this, "There the Lord made for them a statute and an ordinance, and there he tested them, saying, If you will listen carefully to the voice of the Lord your God, and do what is right in his eyes, and pay attention to his commands, and keep all his statutes, then I will not bring on you any of the diseases I inflicted on the Egyptians. For I am the Lord who heals you." Later we read this, when God provides the manna bread from heaven. "Then the Lord said to Moses, Behold, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. Each day the people are to go out and gather enough for that day. In this way I will test whether or not they will follow my instructions." Finally, as Moses speaks to the new generation about to enter the land after 40 years of wandering, he says this, "You must carefully follow every commandment I am giving you today, so that you may live and multiply, and enter and possess the land that the Lord swore to give your fathers. Remember that these 40 years the Lord your God led you all the way in the wilderness, so that he might humble you and test you, in order to know what was in your heart, whether or not you would keep his commandments. He humbled you, and in your hunger he gave you manna to eat, which neither you nor your fathers had known, so that you might understand that man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord." As we read, we discover a principle that shows up through the rest of the Bible. Faith is proved by action, and action is given opportunity by testing. Ultimately, God is using his commandments in the law he gave Israel. This law, with all its intricacies, would be a test, with blessings for obedience and cursing for disobedience. But here's the catch, if you will. The law was always impossible to fulfill from the heart, because the human heart has been corrupt from the first sin in the garden. This was a test upon Israel that would be failed, and would result in the curses and expulsion from the land of Canaan. In the law, God was giving opportunity for faithful, obedient action, knowing full well that failure was inevitable. The stubborn and complaining nation would not ultimately pass the test, as we'll come to see as we continue in the narrative. This leaves us perhaps unsatisfied, though. If a corrupt nature keeps Israel from obeying the law that God gave them, how could the blessings of obedience be accomplished? How could righteousness be achieved? This leads to our final theme. Faith, not the flesh, is the key to righteousness. We're given a clue to this if we go all the way back to Genesis 15:6, when Abraham is being assured of God's promises to him. The passage says, "Abraham believed the Lord, and God counted it to him as righteousness." Through this, we begin to learn that in God's economy of righteousness, it's not actions or the flesh that ultimately gives us the blessings of God's righteousness. It's the faith that precedes the actions. The true, actual, foundational faith in God, that God will do what he says he will do. This was the character of the faith of Abraham, who passed God's test in the land of Moriah. This was the faith that made him willing to sacrifice Isaac on the mountain. This was the faith that gave Abraham insight into God's power, as we learn in the book of Hebrews, that Abraham considered God was even able to raise Isaac from the dead. Faith was the key to righteousness that opened the door to faithful action by Abraham. We also saw this theme play out with the woman Rahab, the pagan, non-Israelite Gentile prostitute, who though she led an immoral life, yet humbled herself to have faith in the God of Israel. She knew that God was responsible for the great deliverance of the nation, and she knew that she wanted to be on the right side of God. Rahab wanted to be delivered by God too, and she expressed this faith through the action of hiding the 2 Israelite spies. She is mentioned in the same Hebrews passage as Abraham, where it says, "By faith, Rahab the prostitute did not perish with those who were disobedient, because she had given a friendly welcome to the spies." Note that Rahab's faith is identified as the cause of her righteous act, a faith that had nothing to do with her immoral background, and everything to do with her response to God. Rahab responded in faith, and that faith caused obedient action. Now remember, the theme is that faith, not the flesh, is the key to righteousness. The response to God is what makes one righteous by God's grace. The reason we contrast faith with the flesh is we're going to see a belief begin to creep in among the Israelites that they are righteous because of their blood relationship with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That in the economy of righteousness, they believe they'll always come out on top because, after all, Abraham is their father. They end up confusing God's faithfulness to his promises with being owed something from God by virtue of their lineage. They forget that God is faithful, not because of them, but because of him. While staying in the land of Canaan was conditioned upon their obedience to the law, righteousness was a different issue. Righteousness was something that preceded God giving the law. Righteousness was something given by God to all who have faith in him, despite their lineage or relationship to Abraham. This righteousness, the quality of being considered morally upright before God, has nothing to do with past action, and everything to do with our response to God and his promises. Faith, not the flesh, is key to righteousness. Join us next time as the story continues. The judges have had their time, but the people want more. They want to be like the other nations with a human leader to fight their battles. They don't want God to lead them. They want a king to lead them. And God? Well, he gives the people exactly the man they want.
For Bible readings, reflection questions, and quizzes, don't miss the Bible Brief app. Available on iOS and Android, so you can go deeper into the story. The Bible Brief is a project of the Bible Literacy Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to helping you learn the Bible. Give to support the Bible Brief by visiting BibleBrief.org or tap the Give link in the show notes. Thank you for supporting the Bible Literacy Foundation.